This week on Filthy Hope.
You know, there are often lots of joys that are happening and we need to celebrate that. But when there are challenges, we have responsibility as human beings to ensure that we do our part to lift that up. And I think when we do that, we become a more harmonious, a more wonderful world, in a world that it's so many challenges that are happening in the world. I think it's being reminded of that. And I share that story because that's what sets us apart as a church, is that we are unapologetic about sharing the hope of the gospel of God in the most unexpected places.
Welcome back to another episode of Filthy Hope. If it's your first time here, welcome. We're so glad you're with us. On this podcast, we spend time in the grey spaces where Jesus, life, and culture intersect. I'm your host. My name is Jonty, and I'm joined by my co-host, Rev Ness.
How you going?
I'm good. I'm really excited today.
Oh, me too.
We're about to jump over to a very special guest.
She's waiting. She's in the green room.
In the green room, yeah. She's
Pumped.
I love the idea that we've got a green room. Stocked with drinks.
Yeah.
You know, like Graham Norton, where
And
they cut
pavlova.
to they cut to the camera shot of the people sitting in the green room.
I know. We could do that today, but our guest is currently hoeing into all the beautiful fruit platter and stuff that
That's
we've
right.
got there.
Yeah. Because I just want to clarify for people that are wondering if we're joking or not. We do have a green room, and
Yes.
it's fully stocked with amazing food and drink.
Yep.
And people come there regularly.
Yeah, so they should come on the podcast.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. She's definitely not in a car on the way out to wherever she needs to
No.
get to next. So we'll just jump straight in, I think.
Yeah, let's.
Our very special guest, which we're about to get to know even more, is our moderator in New South Wales ACT in the Uniting Church, Rev Faaimata.
Yeah, but don't tune out now, because if you don't know what a moderator is, she's like the boss lady of the Uniting Church in our New South Wales ACT state.
Yeah.
Like she's a powerhouse, mate.
Yeah, we
Great combo.
it would have been, oh my goodness, almost 2 years ago now.
Right.
Is when our episode with previous moderator Simon Hansford came out.
He was badass also.
So Marta does a great job of explaining what a moderator is.
Yes.
And if you haven't caught that previous episode with Simon as well and you're interested, feel free to go
Jump
back and
on.
check that one out as well. We're going to jump over right now to our interview with Rev Faaimata, and we'll see you on the other side. Well, we're joined in the studio by a very special guest today, our moderator, Reverend Faaimata Havea Hiliau.
Yay! Clap track,
Welcome.
Yay!
Yeah. We're back. We haven't done this in a while where Ness gives me post-production
Yeah,
work
come
to
on,
do.
do
add
it.
a clap track. So if you're listening, there might be clapping or there might not, depending on if I've done what Ness said. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really exciting to be here in the room. I've been watching this for a long time, so it's good to be in the space.
You look good in the space, sister.
Thank you very much.
You really do.
Right back at you.
You are the funkiest moderator. You know, I know Simon was funky, and he had that whole country funky, you know,
the boots on. And,
the boots and the Tamworth vibe. You've just got city slick going on, girl. It's so cool.
So for people listening and not actually watching, Marta's got a pretty swish pink suit on today, which looks pretty sweet. Yeah,
absolutely.
Just aligning with the whole uniting vibe.
Yeah, I love it. So
It's beautiful.
For people that either aren't Uniting Church people or even aren't even Christians listening, they hear this term moderator and go, what on earth is that? Maybe just give us the quick rundown on what your role looks like.
Look, thank you so much. Yes, I am moderator, and as a moderator of New South Wales ACT, let me just start by saying it's great to be here, and I want to acknowledge the first people of this land that we're gathered on. It's really good to be here. What's a moderator? That's a really interesting word. I mean, for different denominations, they have bishops and, but basically for me, moderator is the head of the Uniting Church for the state of New South Wales ACT. Yeah. We have moderators right across different states of the church. We also have our national leader as the president. So moderator is someone who speaks on behalf of the church in the public space. So when we're invited to comment on various issues or concerns in the public space, one of the roles that I have is to speak on behalf of the church. Also, as a moderator, I get to chair the state meeting of the church. But also one of the really key things that I love being as a part of the moderator is to remind the church that we are the church. We're the body of Christ present in the world in all of that, all of its fullness and its messiness.
Yeah,
So,
wow.
yeah.
I describe the moderator when I'm chatting to my friends that don't know what a moderator is and they think, what is that, Ness, in the church? I say you're the Pope of New South Wales.
I take that.
And you, yeah, except you don't have the costuming.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? It's a bit of a rip-off in the Uniting Church because the best outfits that we can do is like a collar and our robes and our... You've got a badass cross that you wear though, don't you? Is that your mod cross?
No, it isn't.
Yeah, wow.
No, it isn't. But having said that, I think I had contemplated wearing the clerical collar and all of those things. In the public space, I tend to wear my ministry outfit because as a woman, it's really hard to identify a woman clergy.
Yeah.
And so it's important for me that I actually am very particular about what I wear at different spaces, particularly in the public space. Yeah. Like here, it's I don't know. Men may not think about that, men clergy, but as a woman leader, it's important to, particularly because it's a very male-dominated space, that I actually am representing the church. So
yeah, we had an interesting conversation not long ago about when it's actually important to be able to be identified in places. Is it to do with that a lot of the time as well? Like,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, as Ness was saying, the role is representing the church.
Yeah.
And so in representing the church, I wear...
Got to wear the outfit.
the outfit.
Yeah.
That kind of... You don't have to say that I'm a minister.
No, it
turn
says
up
it
in the
all, doesn't
clerical
it?
gear
Yeah.
And I don't have to explain myself.
Yeah,
Whereas
it's
if I
great.
don't, I'll often be confused with, I don't know, with the...
Whoever.
Yeah.
I also just want to say as well, you mentioned that one of your roles is chairing the state meeting, which is called Synod. What you didn't say is that pretty much your first gig when you become moderator. And I remember sitting in that Synod meeting going, I don't know how anyone has the composure to run a meeting like this with, how many people are in that room? It's a few hundred, right?
Yeah, about 300 plus people.
As your first public appearance, or not public, but as your first appearance in the role, what was that like, and how do you prepare for something as major as that? Because I was full of admiration.
Can I just add for the people that don't understand how that rolls? That means Marta is heading up this massive meeting with all her colleagues that she's previously known in other capacities, and now she's like the boss lady running the gig, right?
Moderator, like you're pulling everyone together and giving
helping
space to people,
behave.
and I was just sitting there going, I don't know how anyone does this, let alone as like day one of the job. So, like, what does prep for that look like, and how does that roll for you?
Look, a pretty scary space.
Yeah.
I think as an introvert, but also as a woman, as a woman from a culturally diverse background, linguistically culturally diverse background, this is not my gift. Like chairing meetings is not my gift. And so I knew that was not my strength coming into the role. And so being elected into the role, and you're on the wings for about 2 years, I really had to build my capacity at being able to understand the consensus model of voting, to be able to understand the guidelines of the church, to really build my capacity to be able to navigate that space.
Yeah, wow.
Having said that, it's not easy being the first kind of official task that you have. I was installed that night, and the next morning I'm chairing a meeting of the state with representatives from right across the state of New South Wales ACT, from all the presbyteries. And to navigate that space, I can only say that, yes, it's about preparing leading up to it, but by the grace of God, because I really prayed that I would be strengthened in that space.
Yeah.
Because I knew that was a task at hand initially. And so by the end of it, I really knew that I was not alone.
Beautiful.
In that.
Yeah. I just think about all the different stories in Scripture, but in history as well, of people being called to things that like, not me.
Yeah.
Absolutely not me.
Yeah.
I'm
Mate,
not the right person for the job.
I sit here every week and
that's
go,
right.
what the?
Yeah. And it's not through our own strength and deciding, no, I'm going to train and get good at, it's God that calls us into those things, not because I think God has a bit of a sense of humour with some of these things sometimes as well. Calls us to things that we don't feel like we're ready for, and then on the other side of them we have these conversations with God. We're like, I guess you're right.
Totally agree. Yeah. 5 years ago, I did not imagine that I would be the moderator, the head of the church, in this role now. Had never imagined, that was never in my radar. But I think God calls us, we say, in unexpected ways. It really is. Like I was approached to consider and, about, putting my name as nomination. And I just said, I just need to pray about it. And at the end of that, it was like, if this is God's will, who am I to say no?
Yeah.
With all of my vulnerabilities, with my strengths or gifts or talents or weaknesses, I'm just going to go, okay, if this is the call, then let me test it. And here we are in 2014. I'm a year into the role, and it's exciting. It's also very daunting and challenging as well.
Can I ask you what a day in the life of a Rev mod looks like? Because I'm thinking you came from a really successful congregational ministry position into this, would we say high ranking? I know we don't do that in the United Church, but that's bullshit, really. We do. Okay, because we all know she's the boss, right?
It's a flat structure, but
it's so not. Anyway, so there's the mod right there, and she's the girl. She's doing the thing, girl boss. And you come from the congregation into this role, and you've had a couple of years of prepping for it in the wings. What's a day in the life of the mod? What's it look like, Marta?
Look, it's varied and different every day. There are some things that are in my calendar that are structured, that are there in the calendar, and that's things like the Synod Standing Committee.
Right.
that they're locked in, and they're things that when they are part of the week. But and there are other things like I have prayer and reflection every Wednesday morning. Every Wednesday morning with colleagues, and I lead that space for for the Synod staff and executive leaders of the church. So there are things that are in the calendar each week.
So you get, for our, sorry to cut you off, but for our people that don't understand how the churchy thing works, so you actually get to do sort of your reverendness in those meetings. You get to pray and do what you're really familiar with. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, and lead those things. And the Synod, you said the Synod Standing Committee. What is that?
Jonty talked about, that big meeting that you do as a first task as a moderator. In that meeting, the Synod meeting in session, members are elected. There are people that are elected to be the standing committee. They are elected to be the decision-making body of the Synod for the duration of the 3-year term as a moderator. And so we over 20 plus people that are elected into that space. And so the standing committee, they become the standing committee, so they become the decision-making body.
And you head up that team?
Yes.
Yeah, wow.
Yes.
And you meet monthly?
Bi-monthly.
Bi-monthly,
Yep.
Wow. So lots of big decisions that keep your leadership role and get pushed over to them for their decision-making during the duration of your time.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
I'm an external processor. I don't know if you just worked that out. But That's excellent.
We just watched it happen in real time.
Yeah, you watched it real. Yeah.
So
it's a big gig.
You must see in that space, but in lots of other spaces that you're in your role, lots of really exciting new things happening in our movement, in those standing community meetings and otherwise. You've been in this role for a bit over a year now. What have been some of the most exciting progressions and like new things happening in our movement that we might be aware of or may even not be aware of?
So many exciting things. I mean, when I became a moderator, one of the things that you're asked to do is to come up, to determine what your theme would be. And so I set my heart on the theme Transforming Spirit. Ooh. And it comes out of the Pentecost, the Pentecost reading about being reminded of the gift of God that is given for all. There are no division in that. It's a gift that we all have as people in this world. And so I've seen that transformative Spirit of God at work right across the state of New South Wales ACT. Having said that, let me say that one of the privileges that I have and exciting things that I have is I get to see the church at its best. I just want to unpack that a little bit by saying when I'm invited to go and preach at an anniversary of the church or at an opening of a school or to preach in general in a congregation or a presbytery, I often tend to come and see the best of the church. They're prepared for it. Everybody comes to church, the community gathers. So I get to see probably not the reality of the church each week, but I get to see, I don't know if I'm explaining that well, but I get to see the church at its best.
Yeah.
And that's not always the case.
Because everyone turns up. They want to see you.
Everybody turns up.
That's right.
Everybody turns up. So that's really exciting. But what's also really exciting, what's also really exciting is that you get to see the church in its reality, the challenging side of church, the pastoral concerns. You get to see the responding to disasters that are happening, at floods. And that's not to say that that's exciting, but it's exciting that we get to be the church in the challenging spaces. Yeah. How do we offer hope? How do we offer healing? How do we offer care in the midst of the human challenges that we face each week? So that's probably a weird thing to say about that's exciting, but it's exciting that we get to, because church isn't about that fluff and that goodness all the time. It's about being in the messiness of life, and I get to experience both the joys and also the challenges.
It's a gift, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, to be placed in those what can often be stressful moments. It's a little bit like, it reminds me of a funeral. When I have to do a funeral, Jonty will say, if we're doing a podcast on that same day, I'll get Rock in here to do a podcast, and he'll say, how was your day? I said, oh, it was amazing. And he'll say, but Ness, it was a funeral. I said, I know, but it was amazing. It's my favourite liturgical thing to do, because it is, it's where the rubber hits the road, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And you get to see transformation. You get to be with people on what is often their worst day, and get to love them and be the voice of God and hope in that space. So I bet you get to do that a lot in those specific moments, right?
Yes.
And are they, how does that work ecumenically for you, Marta, when you have to rock into these events with all the other clergy people from all the other faiths? What can you unpack what that feels like, particularly, I suppose, and not wanting to just thrust the female line, but you are a female leader in our movement. What does that feel like for you? Because I'm imagining there's a lot of dudes in the space.
Yes.
How do you rise up for that?
Look, it's a complex space to be in, particularly in, as you said, in the ecumenical with other Christian faith, but also interfaith, in the interfaith conversation, where it often it's predominantly a male space. And one of the things that I am grounded in when I go into those spaces that I'm called to be the church leader. I'm called to be the moderator. And even though, as I said, I'm affirmed in that.
Yes.
And so I have to have, to be confident in 100%. That I'm not alone in that space.
Yep.
That's not to say that it's not intimidating.
No.
A couple of months ago, the patriarch of the Greek Orthodox Church, Patriarch Bartholomew, visited the country. It was a huge event.
Bet.
The street was closed and we're gathered to celebrate, and it's a week of celebration of, worship services, of receptions, at the convention centre. And you walk into that space and where he's having a meet and greet, an audience, I should say, with the heads of churches, and I'm the only female.
Wow.
In the space where you've got the leader of the Catholic Church, the Anglican Church, other denomination in that space, and you're the only woman. I'm strengthened by, although it's intimidating, that I am called into the role, and I have to have confidence in that on behalf of the church. I think at the beginning you talked about you're called into this space on behalf of the church, and that's a very humbling task.
Yeah, 100%.
It's a big task, and I'm humbled by that, and so I've just got to trust that God's with me in that space and back myself in that space.
Yeah, 100%. And when you've got God on your side, that all things are possible.
Yes.
And we rise up to that, and you can feel the presence of the Spirit, can't you?
Yes.
In those moments, and that carries you. I'm imagining even when you're feeling nervous in that space. And the other thing is they have much better costuming than us.
Oh yeah,
don't they?
Yeah.
Like their gear is just off the charts.
Yes.
We need to, Marta, can you do something about that? We need better outfits.
we certainly do. We some gold trimmings and
I think we need bits of rick-rack. 100%, because there's something about that is incredible when you walk into a space and you see somebody dressed. Those the is it the pink Catholic guys? Are they the bishops, Marta? Do you know? Yeah, they have like badass outfits. They're beautifully stitched and they fall beautifully, and they're like royal robes in a sense. I feel like I'm never quite dressed as well as them.
It's an interesting. I was actually listening to another podcast recently, a friends of ours over at Spiritual Misfits, with his name's Scott, and he's a painter from the US who actually spoke really eloquently about, we talk a little bit flippantly sometimes about, the garb and like there's whatever, but like there actually isn't heaps not just in the Uniting Church, but in the wider kind of Western kind of Anglicanized church movement in terms of iconography and images. It's often like when you walk into churches, you think about you going to Catholic Mass, the iconography and art, and it's incredible. And there's visual language that goes with the faith. Our churches often, not always, there's lots of cool stuff happening, but it's often a cross, and that's it. And there's nothing like that's important iconography, but I actually think there's something in there that like we don't have great depth of visual language and iconography in our movement in how we visually and artistically represent our faith and our liturgy and things like that.
That's beautiful, Jonty.
So I don't know. I feel like there is actually like a space that we can fill there.
Absolutely. And I guess on just to add to that, the simplicity of it, I think, is empowering as well. Is not getting caught up in that.
Costuming.
But it is about the word made flesh. It's about the action. It's about the advocacy. It's about the walking alongside people. And I often stand next to, to cardinals and bishops and priests, and they're dressed, to the T, and I'm there in my white robe with my stole and my cross.
Yes.
There's something powerful in that.
Oh, wow.
Just the simplicity of that. Jesus, when he called his disciples, take nothing and go. So we talked about how important it is for a woman to be identified as clergy and as a moderator at different times, but at the same time also there's something wonderful about just being able to make an impact in the world through the actions and the work that we do as a church.
It's beautiful.
And I've been really privileged to be a part of that. I think one of the areas that I really have engaged with is the advocacy work in the Uniting Church. I mean, at the moment, the government is the drug summit is on at the moment, one in Lismore that happened, one in Griffith, and also one coming up next week here in Sydney. You know, that we get to be part of that as a uniting church, part of the conversation, ensuring that change is happening for the vulnerable in our community. And
it's a powerful. No, that's a powerful role to play. Yeah, I think critical.
That's one of the instantly recognisable traits of probably our movement, not to compare movements to other movements, but one of the things that from the outside looking in, people instantly identify with the Uniting Church is advocacy and just kudos for all the spaces that you hold in advocating, whether it's the drug summit and even the last conversation we had when we had Simon on as previous moderator around the way that he talked about being present for at that point. The flooding in regional Australia in regional New South Wales was the current thing that was really taking up a lot of his attention. He was just talking about how the church being identified not as a lofty organisation that has ambiguous intentions, but actually is there handing out fresh undies and food to people who've lost their homes, for example, and actually being there to advocate for hope in the realness of what life can throw to people. I think that's really wonderful that our movement is identified as that.
Yes, you know, as you both know, as a synod, you know, there are areas of that the church has identified to be, you know, areas of mission for the next 10 years of the church. You know, we can talk about our first work with our First Nations people, you know, work with in the regional areas that you've talked about, you know, the Presbytery partnership, that's the regional partnership that's happening at the moment. We talk about the stewardship of the earth, which is something that I'm really quite passionate about with our young people.
Beautiful.
And one of the new areas that we have accepted and adopted in our last synod was, what does it mean to be cross-cultural, intercultural and multicultural church? I think that's always a very interesting area to actually continue to explore what that means as a culturally diverse church in gender, in ethnicity, in generation, to really look at, you know, what does that look like in the congregation, but also in the leadership. We're talking about me as a brown woman, you know, that is holding this position, you know, leading in this position in this way. I'm First Pacifica woman in this space. Like, that's a bit weird and that's a bit different. But it also means that it influences the system and the structure in a different way. Have I completely?
No, that was wonderful.
You know,
perfect.
Yeah.
Maybe we don't want to keep you for too long because we know you're a busy person. 2 questions to finish. I'd be really curious. Maybe first, we're in the lead up to Christmas. And by the time this comes out, your Christmas address will have gone out. And so people, if you haven't had a chance to check that out already, please do so. We'll have a link for that down below. I guess, is there anything particularly on your heart this Christmas that you want to kind of speak to a little bit in terms of how you're feeling heading into Advent this year and reflections you might have on the last year?
Where do I start? So much, you know, so much. Before I get to Christmas, I wonder if I may just indulge and tell a couple of stories.
Please.
Tell a couple of stories. I've just come back from what's known as COP, and that's the Conference of the Party, the 29th COP that's happened, and that's the United Nations Climate Forum. You know, the biggest climate conversation in the world.
Where was that, Marta?
That was in Baku, Azerbaijan.
Oh, wow.
So I just got back on Monday from that. But the reason I wanted to share that is that we were given opportunity as a church to be a part of different platforms. You know, there's press release with the World Council of Churches, and also be part of a panel at the Australian Pavilion. This is 60,000 people that are gathered, representation from 200 different countries. I guess I wanted to share the story. I was a part of a panel of, you know, some very powerful people in Australia, you know, with statistics, you know, all the stats about climate, you know, world warming, one of the lead from Union. So there was, you know, 4 of us in the panel. We get to talk, they get to, you know, speak at different times about, you know, transition to renewable energy and, you know, all of our part in the world to care for God's creation. And one of the things that happened in that space is that I was really discerning, what do I share?
Wow.
You know, what do I share sitting in the room with experts in the room? And I think one of the things that I shared was that, you know, there are lots of experts, but we as people of faith are experts in the faith, expert in walking alongside people and alongside the vulnerable and the marginalised in our community. And I am unapologetic wherever I am about sharing the gospel. And in this very strange way, in this pavilion on the other side of the world, I got to share the gospel, you know, in saying that as a part of the body, whether it's an organisation, whether it's the World, you know, United Forum, or even in this room, as part of the body, you know, there are often lots of joys that are happening and we need to celebrate that. But when there are challenges, we have responsibility as human beings to ensure that we do our part to lift that up. And I think when we do that, we become a more harmonious, a more wonderful world, in a world that it's so many challenges that are happening in the world. I think it's being reminded of that. And I share that story because that's what sets us apart as a church. Is that we are unapologetic about sharing the hope of the gospel of God in the most unexpected places. And I guess I share that in response of, you know, leading up to Christmas. What is it? You know, Christmas this year for me, it's about, I'm passionate about justice, about social justice or climate justice.
Yeah.
All of those things, because as someone who comes from the margins, as a woman of a different colour, as a woman who has experienced a lot of challenges in the world, Christmas for me is about that reminder is who is it in our community that are needing that care and that light of Christ at this time. And it's, you know, do justice, love mercy, and to walk humbly with God.
Oh, wow.
And we have to continue to offer that as a church. It's not just about the wonderful things that we do because we can or we have the money to, but it's to be reminded that there are vulnerable people that are struggling with mental health, that are just struggling with broken relationship or just struggling to put food at the table. You know, the gospel of Christmas this year, you know, talks about, you know, the angels appear to the shepherds in the field for good news for all.
Yes.
And for me, the message of Christmas is about how can you share good news for all in your own community, even in your own family. You know, we're a broken world.
Yep.
And we just, as a church, have to offer, you know, signs of hope and the light of Christ in the midst of that.
Wow. Amen.
Sorry, I'm just...
Can I tell you,
no apology needed.
You are a gift, sister, to the world and to our movement. You bring your full humanity to the role, and it is an absolute honour to be with you and to hear you and to see you. Just bring your full, authentic self to the gig, Marta. We are I just want to affirm you. I don't know if that means anything coming from me, but I'm just telling you, sister, I'm in the room with you, and people, if you're listening, it's just off the charts. It's like a collision of heaven and earth in this moment in the studio, hearing you speak. And so, thank you, girl.
Thank you.
For being you. It's just epic. I'm moved now. I'm all bloody crying.
I think what an amazing message, I think, for people to contemplate, especially as Christians. I think we can often intellectualize our faith, which is, it's good to have head knowledge. But what an amazing thing to think about at this time of year in terms of like, what does it actually mean for the gospel to be good news for all, and how do we enact that and take part in that?
100%.
And I think all of us, if we actually thought about it, there would be people in our lives that we're close to that are doing it rough, if not ourselves. Everyone does it rough, and I think at this time of year in particular, whether it's in terms of family dynamics or other, a lot of those things kind of bubble to the surface, which can be a challenge, but is also an opportunity to be in that and to be advocates of hope in that space.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what I love about, I've listened to a few different podcasts here at Filthy Hope, and I love that the opportunity that we get to share our stories.
Yeah.
And our stories as people of faith is not separate to God, even when we face really difficult challenges in our life. Yeah. When I talk about, I was asked to launch a Renew for All campaign about affordable energy, affordable electricity for everybody, right, in Canberra a few months ago. And I got to actually be real and say, I've experienced my electricity being cut off.
Yeah.
As a single mum.
Wow.
I know what that feels like. And just because I'm a leader of the church, I think that's probably why I've been called into this space. I mean, we know. Yeah. And I think the more we get to actually say, share these stories, actually gives hope to people, but it actually, reminds us as a church that we're the church. We're the church. We get to walk in that vulnerable with the people that are just, with people that are struggling. And for those of us who have experienced that, we know what it's like, man. And so, yeah.
Well, you get an opportunity to speak truth from personal story, and I think that has huge impact in the world. And hearing you speak like that, I didn't know that part of your story, Marta, is just, I think people in the world today are searching for deep authenticity and with faith, because I think in the past there's been a lack of authenticity and people have moved away from faith, and you bring that to the role, and we're really grateful for that, because it hopefully people will be able to hear and be attracted to the story of hope that you bring. I know I am.
Thank you, Ness. And, in sharing I want to be clear that, it's not about me. Like I'm being called into the role, and at the beginning it was like, why me? But I do believe that I've been called in for a reason and a purpose.
Yeah.
And perhaps this is part of it. It's to being able to share the reality of what it means to have a challenging life and offer that healing and hope for others. And, I've often said at different spaces, one of the things that I hope to do in my role is to open the door of the church wide open, for all.
Yeah.
Yes.
For all to be welcomed and, to be a part of. I've been a youth worker, work with youth and young people who are often, I remember as a young person going, anyway, I'll go there. But yeah, I guess it's just about being able to kind of go, how do we make the church more accessible?
Yeah.
Because I believe that that's, Christ's intention, is for the church, for the body to be, open to all.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear more about your story if you allow that into your diary, or even if it's appropriate as a mod. I would love to hear more about your personal story, and I reckon our listeners would absolutely revel in that, because you bring a whole different level of leadership and authenticity to the leadership, because you have a very deep story. It sounds of periods of time in your life where there has been struggle, and that resonates with people in the world. Mm-hmm. And to be a leader in our faith movement who has had struggle, I think people will listen to that deeply and relate to that and your journey. I'd certainly be all up for that. I'm going to get in touch with your EA and find out if we can lock you in, sister, next year. Yeah, amazing.
I think just to wrap up, I think a lot of why I think your story and just the conversation that we've had today, which I've appreciated so deeply, resonates with me, is a lot to do with what I think the mission of our podcast really is. And actually, like
the name.
Where the name kind of comes from is like being advocates of hope in a world that isn't immediately apparent. That's like, hope isn't the default setting of our world, and we don't need to expect that hope that we bring in the gospel to be completely clean of the realities of what living on earth is like for people. So I just want to thank you for being so open and honest with us about that, because it's meant a lot to me, and hopefully it'll resonate with our listeners as well.
You're gold, Marta.
Oh, look, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me here at this amazing podcast and this space. Just to final words is, we're reminded that, in all of this, in all of life for me, we love because God first loved us. And so I want to continue to share that love wherever possible as we lean into Christmas, at a time of joy and wonder, mystery and goodness, as we said, we want to offer hope for all people. But I do, on behalf of the church, on behalf of the Synod of New South Wales ACT, thank you so much for the opportunity. And I want to, wish people a blessed Christmas and a joyous New Year as we, draw close to the end of the year, and just be really thankful that, whether we've been aware of it or not, God has walked humbly with us throughout the year, and I'm really, really grateful for that. So thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for having me.
Merry Christmas to you and your family too, Marta. I hope it's a beautiful time. Hey, by the way, do you get to preach on Christmas morning, or do you get to sleep in?
No comment. No comment.
It's a work day for most of us.
Almost. I can vouch for that. I've been in the church for over 20 years. Last year was probably my first year that I haven't
preached on Christmas.
On Christmas Day.
Oh, wow.
And it was just really beautiful to be able to turn up to church with my family.
Awesome.
So no comment.
Had to cheeky squeeze that one in.
Well, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate your time. And hopefully if our listeners have had any big thoughts or questions that have come up in this conversation, that you can obviously get in touch with us. Can people get in touch with you? Is that something you're able to do, or are you kind of keeping your socials on lockdown?
Absolutely, for sure.
Okay, great. Yeah. So there'll be something down below. If anyone wants to follow up with you, Marta, there'll be a detail down below there for that as well.
No.
And if you'd like to have Marta on your podcast sucked in, she's really tricky to get. But maybe you could reach out to us, and we're friends with her, so maybe.
We'll see if this stays in.
Watch your space. Part 2 is coming up in 2025.
You heard it here.
Well, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And we're back. What an interview.
Oh, she's great, isn't she?
She's incredible. And she mentioned in passing, and I was going to say something as we wrapped up, but we were running out of time because she's a busy person, how much I appreciate seeing another introvert forge ahead where introverts rarely dare to go.
Incredible.
She's really, really amazing. Being able to hold the depletion of social credit is one way of people describing it, where when you're an introvert, you don't, like, being in front of people in a leadership position isn't always energy giving. It's often energy depleting.
Right.
Being able to hold that amidst doing her role, I'm very impressed, and I'd love to ask her about that on another time.
Yeah, because I don't understand that, because I'm a massive extrovert, so I find it life-giving for me, and I love conversation and being in groups of people and that kind of thing. But when I've been asked to shut my mouth and be quiet and be more of an introvert, it nearly kills me, man. And I'm wondering if that's what it's like. Is it what it's like on the flip?
As in, like, having to speak and being...
Yeah.
Yeah, the best I can do, and I'm definitely not going to speak for Marta because her experience could be completely different to mine, but my experience is that, like, you just suddenly fall off a cliff, and it's like... what was the expression you used when you're forced to be quiet?
I hate it. It just shuts me down, and I just, it's the worst thing ever. It feels really horrible when you're having to, because it's almost like you have to perform, but you've got you run out of gas. Wow.
So yeah, I
would never have
known. A lot
of
admiration for what Marta does.
I wouldn't have known she was a massive introvert, nor did I know you were either. You know?
Well, and because what we do here, I'm in outward-facing mode.
Yes.
Because I know I'm on camera, I know I'm presenting something, and I'm having a conversation with you, and very rarely in this setting is that the case. It has happened a couple of times. It's more like in my previous role when I was a youth worker, it happened all the time, like all the time.
Wow.
But yeah, being able to switch on and off your, like, intense social presence, like, it's almost like this sounds bad, but this is certainly my experience, is sometimes you just check out as a way of just, like, going on cruise control. And it's a bit of a performance sometimes. That's certainly what I sometimes slip into.
I'm going to have to look out for that.
Because otherwise I'm just being rude. Otherwise, I like, if I just acted on the way my social batteries operated, we'd be having a conversation, and then I'd suddenly go, okay, Ness, I'm no longer going to listen to you, and I'm not going to talk to you anymore, and I'd just shut off. And it could be halfway through a conversation, and you'd be like, wow, that guy's a dick. I guess he was just pretending to be interested.
Yeah, how interesting.
So yeah, I'm often in fear of, like, being in an important social situation and running out of gas. Running out of gas and not having the ability to put the mask up.
Wow.
And suddenly being, like, perceived as rude or distant. Sorry, that was a big tangent.
It's an interesting tangent. Maybe we should do an episode on that. But Marta just blew the room apart. Yeah. And the best part is, she said she'd come back again.
That's right.
So I am so excited, Marta. If you're watching, and if this becomes a reel, we want you back in the Filthy Hope studios, sister, soon.
We'll be in touch with her PA as well.
That's right.
Also, shout out to Patricia, her PA. She's incredible.
So organised.
Really, really, really great.
Managing that agenda.
Yeah. I don't know, did you have any other reflections after that chat? I just loved her authenticity.
Yeah. I loved her genuine sense of self that she brings to that important role as moderator. Yeah. She brings her full humanity to that space, and it's not a show. What I saw was a real lived experience of a beautifully formed Christian female leader fulfilling a call on her life. Yeah. And that was really powerful to see. Because I get to see it a lot in men, but to see it in women, she's a great role model for somebody like me.
And I think I see in Marta someone who, excuse me, I think I've used the analogy of hopscotch before, that sometimes in Christian discipleship, the temptation is to play hopscotch and go too far ahead of where you actually need to be.
Yeah.
Her openness and vulnerability to be honest about each step of her journey that she's in along the way is incredible and such a great example to people in how the place that you are in today isn't something that you should be wanting to skip ahead to the next thing from. It's today and where you are today in your current season of life, God has just as many plans to be fruitful as God does any future plans that you might have to move forward.
Preach that, brother. There's a sermon. Look at you go.
I'm into podcasting, not preaching, but I think that she's a great example of that.
Yeah, she's gold. She really is. So very grateful for that.
This episode is our last one before Christmas. So we're into Christmas next week, Ness.
Oh, man.
How are you feeling? What's this week or so looking like for you, and how?
Well, it's a busy one because I've got to prep sort of a couple of sermons. I've got to do the Christmas Day, and then I've got to do the Sunday that's a couple of days later. And while everybody then is in relaxing mode, I'm still in big working mode. And I can't kind of let myself relax because I've got to be I'm still doing what I have to do for church, which is exciting. I like it. It's a beautiful season to be preaching in because, like, who doesn't love the baby Jesus story?
Oh, it's my favourite time of year.
Angels, shepherds, lights. It's like, bring that on, man. It's a beautiful time to speak about the hope of Christ in the world.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think I'm probably in a similar spot to you.
It's fun, hey?
I just love the conversations that you have at this time of year.
Yeah, right.
I don't know. There's an excitement and an anticipation at this time of year that I just
And you've got Love Actually coming up in a couple of nights.
I forgot I'd mentioned this on this show. Yeah, there's a
I always think about you doing that.
A group of us. Shout out to any of you guys that are listening. Get together after the big Christmas Eve program on Christmas Eve,
and don't really watch Love Actually. You just have it in the background.
It's on. Well, and part of it is you got to argue about which subplot is the best. And every so often it'll cut away to, like, I don't know, Colin Firth and the chick that speaks a different language or whatever.
I love it.
And half the people will go boo, and then it'll cut back to the kid playing the drums. Yeah. So email us if you have, like, a favourite subplot in Love Actually.
Yeah, let us know.
Let us know, because I have strong opinions.
Well, happy Christmas week, Jonty.
Yeah, happy Christmas. We'll be back next week on Christmas Eve.
Can't wait.
This year has flown by. So whatever you're doing this week in the lead up to Christmas, I hope it's safe and joyful and hopeful. And I think in a previous episode we were talking about, like, what a great opportunity to practice peace.
Yeah, gorgeous.
Not just, trying to hope for peace, but actually enacting peace.
Yeah, beautiful. And start, as Marta said, in your own family.
That's right. Yeah. So whatever you're doing this week, whether it's with family or otherwise, whatever your family or home situation looks like, because I know that this could be a difficult time for people as well,
100%.
which we'll talk a little bit about next week as we go into Christmas. Just know that God goes with you, and go with our blessing as well, because we appreciate every single one of you guys that listen to us, because we've been doing this for far too long now. And the only reason we're still doing it is because you guys are tuning in every week. So
thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, and have a blessed week, and we'll see you next week for Christmas Eve.
Woohoo!
This is a prayer for the people who want to give up, who have been hurt beyond repair and cannot bear to see your face in anything. Find peace in letting go of the guilt that is in yours, and find hope in understanding. Life is not a game you have to win. Forgiveness overwhelming, salvation undeserving. You are loved by something beyond, someone beyond understanding. Drink deep and taste the fullness of life in community.